All right, there we go. David G, welcome to the podcast, brother. It's good to meet you.
Thank you. So excited to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our time together.
Yeah, yeah, man. And just as backstory, you were essentially like the gateway drug to meditation for me. Like, I don't know if
Mm.
that's the best way to describe it, but
I'll own that one. I love that. Thank you.
like maybe I don't even know, man. Like maybe 10 something years ago, I downloaded the Insight Timer app and I was like, I've heard about meditation. I'm diving in. I was doing like 1 to 2 minute meditation because the thought of doing anything longer than that seemed completely ridiculous, and I don't have time for that shit. And I started listening to your voice for a long time, and you sort of became the safe space for me to explore everything that is meditation. And I'm certain that that's not a unique story that you hear, but I wanted to just offer some background for the conversation to yourself and those
Sweet.
listening. Yeah.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you.
And a couple years after listening to you, I realized I had no idea who the heck you were. And I think this is before those apps had photographs. And I Googled you and was like, no way. This guy's great. It looks like Santa Claus went to Burning Man. I love this dude. Uh,
I love that. Yes, it's a very, very common thing for people to email me and go, "Oh my God, I've been listening to you for 5 years, and suddenly I saw what you looked like, Yogi
yeah.
Santa or something like that." Everyone's got some kind of. I'll take the Santa. I used to be a little resistant to the Santa, but like Santa's only like loving and amazing and generous and
Yeah.
except bad Santa, you know,
Bad Santa.
dirty Santa. But otherwise, yeah.
But for those listening that have no idea who David G is, other than very gruff physical approximation that I just dropped on them, like who are you? How do you describe yourself?
I teach people to connect to the stillness and silence that rests within so they can make better choices in their life. And I do that in a whole bunch of different ways. But probably I've gotten most of my attention from recording guided meditations. Started that back in 2003 and just never stopped. Just it brings me so much joy, and I'm just like channeling. I've never had a script. I'm never reading. Typically, I turn out the lights, hold my companion animal, Peaches the Buddha princess, uh, and this is a PSA: adopt your next pet, and we'll just sit there, and then I'll do a guided meditation, and probably done more than I don't know, a little over 2,000 of those. They're all in different places and stuff like that. I used to release albums when they were albums, to so I'd have like 12, or 15 guided meditations on an album. But now I just drop in singles, um, and I teach people. I certify and train people to be meditation teachers. I teach people through various online and in person to be rock star meditators. And I work with a lot of high stress, high pressured individuals um, to help them make better choices, like cops, members of the military, people in high stressed corporate positions. But that's essentially who I am and what I do. I'm just channeling timeless wisdom into practical application. And my mission is just to help people connect to that space.
Dude, that is astonishing to me that you don't use a script. Having listened to many of your meditations and being a writer myself, I would have bet any amount of money that those were scripted and edited and rehearsed, and you just drop in and talk.
Yeah, I spent, it's really funny. I spent about a decade as an apprentice to Deepak Chopra and his partner, David Simon. And we would travel around, the world, teaching all sorts of stuff. And whenever I would we'd go someplace, whether that was, Dublin or Whistler or Chicago, or didn't matter. They would say, "Hey, could you come down for the sound check?" And we'll just do a quick, run through. And both Deepak and David Simon would say, "No, tell us what time the thing starts. What time's the downbeat?" And they would show up and just they never used a script, so that sort of like shamed me a little bit because I had like index cards when I first started doing my teaching, and I was like, "All right, let me just begin to do what they do, which is immerse yourself in the stuff, and then flow it."
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah. There's probably a bunch of meditations out there that I should have scripted or should have edited. But yeah, no, it's all channeling. So, and I don't say that in like some woo woo kooky way. I'm just like, all right, what's the energy of this moment? What do I want to, what's my heart saying? Let's do this.
Hmm.
Like
Do you
this
feel,
conversation.
yeah, and in my experience, that sort of is the distinction between embodiment um, and kind of trying to present yourself as an identity or a figure of some kind. Like once embodiment is like when wisdom lives in your bones is the old expression. And it seems like you got to a place with your profession or your skills or your personhood, however you describe it, whereby it's just like, no, I am that teaching now. I don't have to remember the bullet points. Like I've lived it. I am it. Is that fair?
That's a great way of saying it, because I believe in deep immersion. I believe that transformation comes from this sort of like divine conversion of message, right? Message has to be something that resonates with you. Messenger, you have to believe that that source is trusted in some way, and timing. And I think all of us, when we can be exposed to or run into a message, a messenger, and timing that all align, that's when it happens. Because there's a lot of times when we're sitting in a room and someone's teaching at us, and we're like thinking about what we're going to have for lunch, or they're dropping truth bombs all over the place, and we're like replaying an argument that we had with somebody in our mind, and it doesn't matter what they could be teaching, it's just going right past us. But if once in a while, and I don't mean like once every 5 years, but it can be with regularity. If you immerse yourself into a particular teaching or lineage, or even just like a thread, a thread of knowledge, um, amazing things happen, and then that suddenly does become you. And I believe that's how we can shift our relationships with people that we have conflict with. Shift it inside first before you start apologizing or negotiating. If you can shift it inside, then everything else is just unfolds. And I think it's sort of kind of the same way. I'm sort of like a geek for the ancient texts, whether that's the Bible or the Quran or the Rig Veda or the Bhagavad Gita or the Upanishads or the Yoga Vashishta. Like I love just, I happen to have like just a couple of copies of the Bhagavad Gita just lying around here, and all different translations, different people. The small Gita, the smallest Gita that could ever exist. Um, and so um, the way I learned the Bhagavad Gita, and actually, the Bible and the Quran and so many of these ancient texts, is by supposedly this is how Einstein did it. Einstein read the Bhagavad Gita every single day. He would just go and then read a verse and then go, And then that would be like his angel card for the day or his oracle card. And he would just live that. And I began doing that. And at a certain point, it's whatever you really fully immerse in becomes you. And so
Hmm.
whether that's the Yoga Sutras, or whether that's, the teachings of the more modern philosophers and translators, I think when you fall in love with a particular line of teaching or information, whatever it is, it could be how potato chips are made. It doesn't have to be profound, although that could be profound. Um, then you just go deeper naturally, and that then becomes something that you just casually talk about. You don't need bullet points or notes or anything along those lines. For example, just 2 nights ago, I made this potato leek soup, and I don't know why, but I'd been in a restaurant like 5 years ago and had this amazing potato leek soup, and so I was sitting around going like, I think I'd like potato. It was a cold day, you should do that up in Squamish, in that cold Canadian, like when it's 30 degrees in the morning or colder. And I was like, let me go buy some Yukon potatoes. Let me buy some leeks. Let me get some garlic. Let me get some, I got like all this stuff together, just chopped it up, put it in a thing, sauteed this, poured in some coconut milk. It was like a vegan um, potato leek. And so like I'm not a master. I made it once and it was great. But like I don't need the recipe anymore. I've got all that, inside of me. So we all have those moments where we read a book or we have a conversation or we see something on TV or explore something and then poof, it just embeds itself because we like it. Stuff we don't like, if that had come out horribly, I wouldn't be talking about potato leek soup. I wouldn't be thinking about it, and I certainly would never be sharing with anyone what my recipe is. And yet, so I think that's an important thing that comes about in the teacher trainings that I host, um, guiding people to touch so many different things, and the stuff you touch and go, "Whoa, this is gold." That's the stuff you're going to weave into yourself, and that's the stuff you're going to share. And the stuff that's like, doesn't really resonate with me. You're never going to talk about that anyway. We're never going to talk about the 5 worst movies we've been to, but we'll talk forever about the 5 best, and we'll tell the world about those. Um, so I think, if we're willing to dedicate ourselves to the stuff that is sparked passion, the passion that's sparked inside of us, I think we all, that's how we actually operate. We just sort of like don't give ourselves credit for that.
Mm. I love that soup analogy. That's really good. The idea of like embodying the recipe and you can just make the thing, analogous to getting up and teaching or dropping into a meditation is killer. Are there areas where you're still exploring with curiosity and passion various aspects of the personal development space or ancient texts, or like are you continuing to seek or pursue or discover?
I am. Um, I keep a certain rotation, probably of like 35 books. I'm just like rereading them, and new ones come in, and I forget about other ones, and they go out. And that really that's a fascinating thing. Like last year, I was like so into breathing. I must have read about 15 different breathing books and breath books and all of that. The year before that, I was like so fascinated by the chemical and hormonal aspects of the vagus nerve. And for years before that, because I was trained by Deepak endocrinologist, David Simon neurologist, I've always, for at least for 20 years, really been so fascinated by the brain. And I've done brain studies and I've had my own brain analyzed and I've meditated and I'm like so geeking out on all that, the various neurological things that happen. And um, that stuff, although it was new to me, and then like within 5 years, it was like, yeah, that's obvious. Um, no one knows that stuff. So anytime I talk about, oh, here's what happens to your hippocampus, the part of your memory, part of your brain responsible for memory, and spatial orientation. Um, and here's what happens to your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for anxiety or stress or anger. People are hearing that for the first time. I've heard it 7,000 times and I've talked about it, a whole bunch. But I am always fascinated. And as I started teaching more and more people in a very secular way, teaching engineers at Facebook and teaching cops and teaching members of the military and teaching people who aren't wearing an Om on their t-shirt or, aren't wearing, yoga pants or something like that. Suddenly I started realizing like how can I communicate with these people? It's not by saying, close your eyes and connect to the space of nothingness that rests inside, which is good for most of us. But for somebody else, we have to figure out what's their language. How can I communicate with this person? It's not pandering. Pretty much it's finding out what language do you speak. Let me know. Let me see if I can, if I speak that language, and then we can communicate on a deeper level. So talking about stress, and talking about anxiety, and talking about trauma informed meditation techniques, and all the neurological and hormonal and chemical stuff. I'm such a fan of that, and I can't get enough. So I'm always weaving those kind of books as well
Mm.
into my world, and then they all end up fusing together. So I could be talking about the Four Agreements of Don Miguel Ruiz in one moment, and The Body Keeps the Score, by Vanderkolk, and it can go on like that. And again, this stuff just becomes me,
Mm.
and you know, I'm not necessarily a very entertaining dinner guest going like, ooh, 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 here's what happens to your medial and ventral prefrontal cortex. But it's fun for me.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the dinner host and what the
That's
vibe
true.
is at the table. Uh, I've had a similar experience where I get really excited about a topic or an author, and I'll just like devour all of their work. And then I have found that the more that I do that, I'll start to see the overlap, almost like a Venn diagram of I'll be reading a book and thinking, oh, you've read Gabor Mate's work, or oh, you've read the Celestine Prophecy. And it starts to almost lay the foundation down where I'm like, okay, I understand this topic enough to go and build the next floor on top of. Does that make sense?
Yes, so much. And when I'm designing curricula for various trainings or courses, and suddenly I'm like, I'm taking in the teachings of the Buddha, and the five remembrances, and the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Path, and then I'm moving further on the timeline, closer to the year zero, and I'll pass. Oh, this is the year 300 BC, the Bhagavad Gita, all of that stuff. Wait a second, people who wrote the Bhagavad Gita had heard of what the Buddha was talking about. 300 years later, Patanjali writes the Yoga Sutras, and using the same language that the Buddha was using, and talking about, again, various threads from that. And then you go like 700 years later to the teachings of Adi Shankara, the boy sage, and he's writing about stuff that happened 700 years before. So I'm sure they've all been thinking, they're all, this is the proof. We're all standing on the shoulders of somebody else, whether that's, in terms of how we show up every single day, standing on the shoulders of ancestors and people who've given us great ideas. Um, but that's been going on for thousands and thousands of years. So how great is that? And I think that's, once you start going down the rabbit hole and then you realize, wait, is that the seven spiritual laws or the four noble truths or the six paramitas, or is that it's like, guess what, it's all the same. They're all saying the same. The message is love, and then the question is, okay, how many different ways have, whether it's Jesus or Buddha, or pick your Missy Elliott, who doesn't matter who it is, how are they coming to this? And has there been an original idea, uh, even with all the Bransons and Musks and all that other stuff? Probably not. They're all just being, even AI. It's been going on for thousands of years. So
Mm.
I think it's great. I think we are all creating our own, we're weaving our own web. And I encourage people to read as many diverse things as possible. You don't have to buy them all. You don't have to buy into them all. You don't have to agree with them all. You take a thread from this and a thread from that and a thread from this, and then you weave your tapestry of life. And so I think it's great.
Mm. I'll inject my own PSA for public libraries at this stage because when you reference not needing to buy them all, like that can be literal. And I find books from the library, they're free. And if you read 20 pages, there's no obligation to finish it. You can just get a smorgasbord of items from the buffet, take little bites of each, and then really dive into those. So that's my own PSA if you're listening. Go support your local public library. Um,
And and on that same thread, being an author, I've donated, of just a whole bunch of books to various libraries around me, um, just because they're sitting on my shelf, And it's like, well, wouldn't they be better off in sitting in all five of these copies in a library? Sometimes
Mm.
I bring, 10 copies of something and they go, it's okay, we'll take two. And I'm like, come on, take them all. But yeah, the library, when will the library cease to exist, right? There's going to be that moment where suddenly
Oh,
libraries just don't even exist. I'm sure Amazon is
David G,
working
come
on that.
on. No, you can't just drop that sorrow bomb in the middle of this discourse.
Oh, there'll be something else to replace it, but
Yeah,
the library was that sacred special place, and
forever.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And libraries have kick-ass technology, you
Hmm.
know. They're oh, I should probably say that differently in case you want to make this a clean podcast.
No,
You
we're
know.
good. We're good.
Okay. All
You
right.
can say kick ass. People have said much worse. I've said much worse than kick ass. But to your point a moment ago, you summarized, I think, all of the ancient text as simply the message is love. Uh, and we've all had different descriptions of that. And so when you encounter life or individuals who are seeking or struggling or stressed out, why do you think it's so difficult for us to simply be present and love?
Because it's not one of the teachings that we ever experienced. No one,
Mm.
people have taught us how to brush our teeth and how to tie our shoes and how to eat an apple and like all this other stuff and how to play, attempted how to play nice with others. But, very few parents have said, oh, you're sad, stop resisting it.
Mm.
They've said, oh, you're sad, come on, let me tickle you. They've said, oh, this isn't working, instantly let me fix it. And so I think, just we're not used to sitting in the stuff that doesn't work and allowing it. And some of that stuff could be childhood trauma. I mean, we can go back to whatever, but we hold grudges. We're not feeling enough. We're not feeling um, respected in certain situations. We don't get the, as Maslow, referred to the various, needs that we have. Um, we're not getting the attention we think we need. We're not getting the affection we think we need. We're not getting the appreciation or recognition we think we need. And we're not feeling the acceptance. Everyone wants to belong to something. That love and belongingness category is so important. But a lot of times, people feel like they're on the outside of that, whether that's self-imposed or someone else is creating that realm. But you know we've we're all resisting something. Something happened. We were born perfect and whole and pure, and then we popped out into this world and suddenly we were individuated. Someone else was responsible for feeding us in those early years. Prior to that, we were hanging out for 9 months with our kicking back in a chaise lounge, just getting fed, someone breathing for us and taking care of our pooping and peeing and all that stuff. And then suddenly one day that ended and we became dependent. We thought we were autonomous, and yet we were so dependent during those early years for
Mm.
someone to do everything for us. And then one day they were like, all right, we're stopping that now. You're on your own. And it's like, please make a pancake. You know, I can't even reach the stove. Please make me that pancake. And so that kind of thing has just, it's a journey, but no one really remembered that they were born perfect. Well, most of us, don't remember. We were born so perfect. So I think our journey is a return to the memory of that wholeness. And
Mm.
in the between then and now, there's a bunch of speed bumps and traumas and etchings at the cellular level. That pain's been etched into us, and those kind of things act as triggers because we were never willing to just accept that, and that's why people stay stuck in the past. If you're just willing to own it and accept it, you can instantly step into the future and then make a more conscious choice. But not so easy. Not so easy. And it's not just like snap your fingers and get present, sweetie. You know, it's a, it's a, for many people, you mentioned the word embodiment earlier. You know, there are energetics to this process, and I really think that that's considered like a kooky thing, but we can heal ourselves energetically easier than we can heal ourselves cognitively. You know, knowing that a relative hurt you at an early age, intellectually, you could have therapy about that for 20 years, but energetically, you could start that healing process in 10 minutes. And so, but that's not considered like the normal path towards healing. So either people are in denial that there even is an issue or that it can be solved, or they haven't really explored other ways um, to go to that. But we're on a this is a this life we have here is a healing journey.
Mm. And what is the role of meditation in that journey? I guess it's a very broad topic, but it's kind of like a softball to let you take this train wherever you'd like to take it, I suppose. When you mentioned healing energetically, and you could do that work in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
w-
Well, to get to a place where you could even say, okay, fine, as you're rolling your eyes, fine, we'll go there. Guide me to, you know, to that thing that I'm holding on to, and let's really go there. In physiologically, where is that? Where's that resting? Where's that etched inside your physical body or your energetic body? To even get to that place, you require a pattern interrupt, some kind of break in the action, because we're living a life of nonstop scrolling. We're living in existence where our eyes are on the next thing that's unfolding. Where there's so much stimuli coming at us, whether that's online, on TV, on listening to stuff, and so there's a lot. And we wake up, we burn through the day, we pass out. We wake up, we burn through the day, we pass out, and then one day we die, and that's our life. So if we could just, and we're conditioning and reconditioning and reinforcing every pattern that we've ever lived up to that moment. So the only way for there to be a new pattern, the only way for there to be a new possibility, the only way for there to truly be a shift of any sort, whether it's, this magnificent shift or this teeny little shift, you have to insert a break in the action. It's referred to as a pattern interrupt, just a break, whether that's taking a breath, whether that's closing your eyes for a minute while you breathe, whether that's stepping away from your computer or putting the phone down for a while, whatever that is. We don't do that. We have been trained from an early age that people who aren't doing are losers. If you're sitting on a park bench with your eyes closed, clearly you're just someone who has nothing to contribute to the planet. And meanwhile, you could be saving the world, um, just by connecting to that little break. And so meditation is the more, we take that millisecond and we extend it and extend it and extend it, make it really this rich space between, which already exists, but we connect to it. And that next moment, we're a lot more open. We're a lot more creative. We're a lot more accepting. We're willing to see things just a little bit differently. And our brains are rewiring when that happens, right? You ever watch a movie and, you're like staring at the movie and suddenly this actor appears on the stage and you're like, oh, it's that guy. It's that guy. He was in that, and then suddenly you can't remember anything. He was in that movie with the other guy, and like they were doing that thing. You become like totally, your vocabulary is just falling, into the floor. And then someone says, "Hey, you want some popcorn?" And you're like, "Yeah, I love that popcorn." You're like, "Oh, Ray Liotta," And so that break, and that's a pattern interrupt. And we know that in that moment, all those aspects of the brain, all those neural fibers actually like pulled away for a second while you suddenly thought popcorn. And then, your brain had still been trying to get to that memory and then instantly reconnected at a better level. So that's what's happening neurologically. And that can happen the same way internally because we've connected all those threads from our emotions, from our traumas, from the grief that we have, from the victim state that we have, all that stuff. and we're pretty good at cementing it. There's even like, we have these inane phrases out there where people, are proud, can't teach an old dog new tricks, so it's like, no, my dog's 15. She just learned something new last week. We all can, but we have to be open to it. And the only path to that is, is breaking through. I have a podcast, The Shadow and the Light, with Elizabeth Winkler. She's a therapist and a meditation teacher, and she has this expression: "The wound is the way. The wound is the way. It's the answer to everything. But unless you're willing to get still, you won't go there. Why would
Mm.
you go to that hurtful, painful, horrible place?" And so it's pretty sweet. It's and meditation is like, what do I have to do? Nothing. How hard is it? Do I need to like build up my biceps or my lung capacity? Could you close your eyes and watch your breath? I'll get back to you. Can we do that? And of course, guided meditation is a way to do that. It's not tricking people, but it's guiding people to that place. And that's, I've dedicated my life to that. How can I guide someone to a place where something new inside of them can unfold?
Mm.
And then it's up to them. I'm not going to tell them what to think or how they should act or who they should vote for. But can you get to that place? Because I bet there's a higher probability you'll make a better or a more conscious choice.
For you personally, like when you look back at your life trajectory, like was there a moment where you recognized like, oh, this is my thing? Like this is my jam. I know reading your bio online, you worked in finance for a while and then suddenly you were Deepak Chopra's COO. I'm curious, like, do you remember the first time you meditated? What drew you to the
Well,
practice?
I started meditating in college, and it was a Zen meditation. There were 12 of us. It was an experimental Asian studies class, and we all sat in a circle. It was so novel and so kooky. And our Zen master stood in the corner. We were instructed that when we had a thought during the meditation, we should raise our hand. In his hand, he carried an 18-inch bamboo stick known as a keisaku. And when we raised our hand, he would actually come and hit us on the back. And so that didn't feel good. When you find yourself like lying to your Zen master, it's time to definitely move on. And so I dropped that class. I only was in it for like, a month. And I was like, I like the meditation part, but I hate getting hit while I'm doing it. So then I went into candle gazing, and then I got into Vipassana, and then I got into mindfulness, and then I got into like all these different things. And as I got more deeply involved in the corporate world, all that stuff fell away.
Mm.
I wasn't making time for it. I traded in my morning practice for an early train ride to work, and I traded in my evening practice for a nice glass of scotch, and like all that was gone in it. But I did realize, wow, balance is also gone from my life here. I was feeling pretty balanced for this period of time, and I don't feel balanced at all. My relationships were frayed. I wasn't really loving what I was doing. It's a lot of stuff that really. So that was sort of like I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that this didn't feel good. And then I went on my own little eat, pray, love journey without the eating and the love, just a lot of prayer, um, traveling around India looking for the guru. And then I had an aha moment that the guru rests inside. In fact, I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, laying in a hammock in southern India in a cashew forest with parrots squawking. And I suddenly read chapter 2, verse 48, where God says to Arjuna, the protagonist of the Bhagavad Gita, Yogastha Kuru Karmani. You want to know how to live your life? Yogastha, establish yourself in the present moment, Kuru Karmani, and then perform action. And it hit me like a lightning bolt. I was like, yes, that's it. Sit down to rise up, get still, and then be brilliant. Hashtag chill brill. Like whatever the things that you can apply to that. And I raced home. Can't ever really race home from India, but after like a 30-hour bus ride and 30-hour plane and waiting in the airport and all that other stuff, um, it was clear to me. I just want to meditate every single day. It makes me so happy. It brings me such clarity. It makes me so relaxed. I don't resist stuff in my life. And there's a lot of healing that came with that. But my friends had an intervention with me because they were like, dude, all you do is sit around and meditate. I was like, I know. Isn't it incredible? And they're like, It's a little weird. You're not working, you're not doing anything, you're just sitting and meditating. I go, I know. I've never been happier in my entire life. And they were like, well, if you really want to learn, something, learn to teach it, maybe you could share this with other people. And I was like, come on, I'm from Queens. We don't care about anyone else's meditation. Why would I care about teaching someone to meditate? They were like, well, just maybe you could elevate your own practice. So that's when I headed off to California. Deepak Chopra was holding a 4-day um, workshop. And it was also a precursor to being certified um, by Chopra Center University at the time. And I never left. That was Bastille Day. It was July 14th. The workshop ended. They hired me that day, and I never went back home. Well, I went back home 6 months later just to get my stuff. But I was honestly, whatever was in my suitcase, that's what I lived on for like 6 months, starting as the COO, then the lead educator, and then the dean of Chopra Center University. And so even then, I never had the feeling like, oh, I've arrived, because considering, that I was in the world of mergers and acquisitions and, out there and, the skyscrapers of New York, um, it didn't feel like I had really gotten to a thing. But then I started launching these meditations when I was at the Chopra Center. I created this thing, the 21-day meditation challenge in, I don't know, 2004. And like 5,000 people signed up for it. I was like, yes, yes, this is amazing. I love this. And then I did another one and 25,000 people signed up, and I was like, I think I'm making some kind of impact here. And then I did the fourth one and 100,000 people signed up. And that's when Deepak stepped in and said, okay, the thing works. Oprah and I will take it from here. And so it's like, you guys could probably, and they had like 1 million people at one point doing that 21-day meditation challenge. But it was in that moment that I realized, you know what? I think there's like enough infinite content that I could keep flowing to various people in all sorts of different ways based on the timeless wisdom traditions that speak so clearly to me. And so that was the moment where I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And there were days where I recorded 5 or 6 meditations in a day. I couldn't stop. I didn't necessarily release them, but I was like, it's like journaling for me. I record meditations. I must have 150 meditations that never have been released, but I needed to go through that thing because it was inside of me and I just wanted to get it out. So I think then I left the Chopra Center after 10 years. David Simon passed away, and Chopra Center was in a much better space um, structurally and financially than when I got there. And I was like, all right, my work is done here. I think I'm ready to take this to the next level, starting from nothing and see if I can, create my own world. And I created the davidji Meditation Academy, and get really, really scary in the first 18 months. Crickets. It's like, hi, hello, anybody listening to me? Because I never got to tell those 100,000 people that, like, oh, by the way, keep following me. keep keep following me on Facebook and Instagram. I don't even think there was Instagram then. So bean by bean, just started connecting with people. Um, and I love the Insight Timer app. I used to use it as just a timer to bring me out of my meditation. And then they reached out to me and said, hey, you want to give us a meditation? I was like, yeah, I'd love that. I think they asked like 5 people. That was like the first beta testing. I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then I said, can I give you one more? I got a couple in the queue here. And that became like a whole really beautiful trajectory um, of my life. And then Unplugged Meditation. It's another meditation app, a video meditation app. They asked me to come to LA and film, on their 21 days of whatever. So I did that, and I started training people. And at that point, I remember my first teacher training. There were 14 people in the room, and this was all in person. And I was like, yes, yes, this is amazing. 14 people. Um, and I think I lost, I don't know, 15 grand on that event, renting the space and doing all that stuff. And I was like, not a sustainable model. I either need more people, um, or I need to come up with you know, a better template. And so, yeah, our last teacher training, we had 50 people. Um, and it's great. And then the pandemic was another accelerant because suddenly all these people who would never fly to me on the west coast of California, never stay in a hotel or anything like that, they were sitting on their couch and we were doing teacher trainings in the comfort of their own home. And so I've kept that model. I've I have both models. I have in-person things and virtual things, and right now I feel, sky's the limit. Sky's the limit because people need the healing. And this is their, if they don't have that first step to connect to the stillness that's resting inside of them, they don't, it'll be much harder. I'm just trying to make everything just a little easier because I know that my journey, um, there were times in my previous existence in the corporate world where I was so sad and so depressed and so frustrated and suicidal. And meditation healed my heart and healed my soul and really allowed me to fall in love more deeply with myself and then forgive myself and forgive all these people who I was holding grudges against. And that was like a just like a liberation.
If I may project the devil's advocate voice for someone listening right now that has never meditated and they're hearing you say, I was suicidal and depressed, and sitting still and doing nothing healed me. I'm sure you get this question pretty frequently, but to those skeptics who are like, this makes, I used to be that guy. I was like, this makes no sense. Oh, I should just sit and do nothing quietly. That's going to fix my life. Okay, bro. Like, go have some more ayahuasca. Um, how do you respond to that?
Um, Yeah, well, it's sort of I consider it better than ayahuasca. So I think ayahuasca has its, you know, bufo and toad venom and like, all sorts of stuff. They have their places. We're finding that out pharmacologically. That's, you know, they're creating pattern interrupts in their own way. Some people need, to see the abuela, the grandmother whispering the ancient secrets into their ears while they're, in that state, but I believe that meditation can be that slow burn that just moves you closer and closer and closer to a deeper understanding of yourself. And I'm a big fan of, work with your doctor. I'm not a physician, but I was trained by physicians, and I know the importance of people, partnering with their physicians. But there's so many people, and I'm not talking about like 20, close in the thousands that I have worked with and trained over the years, where quite honestly, over time, they were able to wean themselves off their medication by really leaning into their meditation. And there's a lot of science about, the benefits of, I'm a real stickler for the evidence-based stuff. And there's great science on the power of a consistent, got to be consistent. Can't like phone it in. You can't like, well, I thought about meditation today, but I didn't do it. I call those crisis meditators. There's no science on crisis meditators. There's only research studies on people who show up and meditate every single day. Um, whether they're watching their breath or repeating a mantra. But there really are these great MRI scientific studies at UCLA, USC, University of Wisconsin, in Madison, University of Miami, um, Harvard Medical Center, Mass General, University of Massachusetts. I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there. Um, but I think as we go through this journey, it's the gentlest place to start. If you're sad, the great teachings tell us sit with your sadness. We have 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And that's a thought approximately one thought every 1.2 seconds. They're coming, so we don't meditate to stop the thoughts. We just, meditation allows us to cultivate our ability to witness without judgment. And then you realize, oh, I'm not my thoughts. I'm having them and they're coming in like wild, but I'm not them. Let me watch this one and watch it come and go like a cloud. Let me watch this pain in my heart and watch it come and go like a cloud. And the more we cultivate our ability to witness, because that's all we're doing. We're not trying to transcend and we're not trying to become enlightened and we're not trying to go into these deep states. That stuff happens in time, but we're just cultivating our ability to witness. And in our ability to witness what's truly, you know, how we're feeling and what our emotional charge is and what our past laden grievances are and how we can be kinder, more compassionate, more forgiving, and more loving to ourselves and to others, that actually just unfolds with a practice. And I think it helps to read various texts along the way, to tap into these teachings, whatever your teachings are. It might be the Bible, it might just be like a cool book by Pema Chodron or Ram Dass or Wayne Dyer or Deepak Chopra or anything along those lines. But I think as we continue the process, things get a little bit easier. It's like if you walk, if you, let's say you walk to work every single day and you walk past this one house where there's a dog, a barking dog, an angry, foaming at the mouth dog barking at you, and you're scared of that, and so you back away. But every day, as you walk past that dog, at a certain point, that dog's scariness seems to not be so scary. Suddenly, we're not afraid. We might have been horrified the first 10 times, and then it's sort of like, oh, yeah, there's that barking dog. And then there's that thought, like, I wonder if that dog is suffering. I wonder if, is that dog happy barking or is that dog upset? And then suddenly your whole attention got shifted off of, I'm so scared. I'm being triggered. Oh my God, this is horrible. It's reminding me of. And suddenly you're like, wonder how that dog is doing. And then there will be that day where you're like, hey, puppy, I brought you a little treat. How do you go from running in horror from the bark to bringing a treat? And I'm not saying it happens the 20th time. Maybe it happens the 100th time. But this is how meditation works. We're sort of like rewiring our brain. We're reformulating how the hormones and chemicals in our body show up and speak to us about our past. And ultimately, it allows us to make peace with our past. So I'm not telling anyone like, oh, you're taking Prozac and you're really depressed. You keep doing that. Add this though. How about a complementary? They make these pharmacological cocktails all the time. Well, how about if one of them is your pharmaceutical and one of them is your meditation practice? And in time, you'll see a very, very clear shift. And I would speak to your medical professional about that, whether that would be a Western doctor or a functional physician or complementary doctor or whatever that looks like. But it's a journey, and you could just as easily be depressed and take a pill, and maybe you'd be okay, but that would be your life forever. Or you could actually begin the journey back to the memory of your wholeness through the addition of meditation in your life. And I say start small. I meditate for 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the afternoon. I sprinkle in a whole bunch of meditations, but I'm a meditation nerd. So don't follow me. How about like you wake up and you tap your snooze button on an iPhone that's 9 minutes and 3 seconds? Come on, before you even get out of bed, and just listen to a guided meditation, or just have a gratitude practice, or just watch your breath, or just repeat silently, I am. And then at 9 minutes and 3 seconds, your meditation timer goes off. If you're on an Android device, it's a full 10 minutes. I don't know why Apple came up with the 9 minute and 3 second thing. But then in the afternoon, how about just 5 minutes, somewhere between noon and dinner time, just 5 minutes. As you breathe in, silently repeat let. As you breathe out, silently repeat, go. And just do that for 5 minutes. Do that for a month. Your meditation in the morning, your letting go practice in the afternoon, within 2 days, you'll feel a shift. 2 days of doing that. You'll actually feel a physiological shift and an emotional shift inside of you. And that's, the best is yet to come after that.
Hmm. Yeah, I love the line on your website. It says something like "get heavily meditated," if I remember right. I love that. I just have two more quick questions. You've
Yeah.
opened the door on this idea of mantras, and I recall when I started meditating that your guided meditations were unique in that way, and that they had mantras, and I'd never experienced that before, and it seems to be a staple of your teaching. And I'm curious, just anything you have to share about why that is, what drew you to the power of mantras, what they mean to you.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be supposedly the Buddha, 600 BC, 2,600 years ago, became enlightened as he sat under a fig tree in the town of Gaya and just watched his breath. So when we talk about mindfulness meditation, most people are referring to simply sitting and watching your breath. Some people are actually watching the physical breath coming into them, down into them, and watching it leave. Some people are just noticing how their body, their belly fills, or their chest rises up on an inhale, or their chest eases on an exhale, but we're witnessing, we're watching, we're noticing, we're observing the breath. And that's like a mindfulness meditation. Of course, it's stripping away all the ancient teachings and all the context, but in practice, that is that thing that people basically talk about. That rests at the core. Of course, there's a lot of compassion and judgment-free aspects that are woven into that as well, but the actual physical mechanics are watching your breath. Then there's um, this other lane. Um, TM, transcendental meditation, is part of that lane. Um, and that has, it's a much more modern construct. Maharishi introduced that to the West in like the mid to late 60s. And so that's the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And so that's the repetition of a particular word, sound, phrase, or vibration. In transcendental meditations, those are not words that we're familiar with. They're just vibrations. Supposedly, these ancient sounds. They're called seed sounds. Ancient sounds, like what's the sound of the ocean, of the wave hitting the shore? What's the sound of leaves falling to the forest floor? What is that sound? It's not associated with a meaning. So as we look at those types of mantras, those are called bijas, bija, which just means seed sound. And then there are these other mantras that do have correlations. And it was probably 75 years ago that Dr. Herbert J. Benson of Harvard Medical Center fame invited people to come up with your own mantra. What's something that brings you comfort? What is that thing that brings you comfort? Is it Ave Maria? Is it Jesus is my Lord and Savior? Is it Shalom? Is it Mother? Is it I am? Anything that comforts you. What is that? What kind of phrase or word could you just repeat over and over that just brings solace to you? And it may be different at different times. What is that? So he's the first person who came out with like use these English mantras that are very, very correlated to the things that serve you. And I sort of like using other stuff. I didn't grow up speaking Sanskrit. I don't think anyone has. Sanskrit has not been spoken as a language for over 500 years. So none of us grew up speaking Sanskrit conversationally. And so the ancient texts and the ancient readings um, that, really act as the foundation for so many of my teachings, they're rooted in Sanskrit. And so the fact that, it is not a personality like the Maharishi or, some other person, but it's like ancient stuff that's been rolling for thousands and thousands of years. Like, what's the first line of the Rig Veda? Supposedly the oldest book in history. the first three words of the Rig Veda, Agni Mile Purohitam. I surrender to the fire of transformation. Who can't use that one in English or in Sanskrit as like a cool rebirthing, a reawakening, setting a new trajectory, getting a second chance, starting over? So what I don't know, it just clicked with me, and this is my 20th year that I'm teaching people to meditate and training people to be meditation teachers. And so for 20 years, I've been really like leaning into that. Let's use this combination of Sanskrit words, and let's use this combination, and let's use these. And it's become sort of like a signature of mine. But I find them so healing and so empowering. Just love that. Like Om Moksha Ritam. Om is the universal vibration. We've all heard everybody go Om. Um, Moksha is liberation. Moksha is emotional freedom. And Ritam is the rhythm of the universe. And I believe if you can bring a certain intentionality to any meditation that you do, whether you're just watching your breath or repeating a mantra or doing a body scan, when you have that intention to like open your heart and heal your heart, Om Moksha Ritam, the rhythm of the universe, and your heartbeat and the universe's heartbeat become aligned, there's a healing that happens there, whether you spend 5 minutes doing that or 30 minutes doing that. And so, yeah, I'm a mantra. I'm a fan. I'm an ambassador of mantras. I don't get a commission for for sharing the mantras. There's no mantra society, but I will continue to do that because it makes me happy and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
And they're vibrational. Imagine us repeating Om Moksharitam or Agni Mile Porohitam or any of those types of things. Suddenly we realize, oh, I'm repeating something that millions of people have chanted or repeated silently for thousands and thousands of years. And you like tap into that cosmic energy.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that the answer essentially is like that I love it and I think it works and I just want to share that. If I'm reading through the lines,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I
That's
was
it.
made me happy, so I wanted to do it. Like that's
Right.
cool.
Well, if it made me happy, maybe it'll make you happy too.
Yeah, it's that's great, man. And then last question: what does "see you in the gap" mean to you? So you tend to
Oh, well,
finish your meditations with that
yeah.
phrase. Like, where did that come from? What is that?
I'm like big on, I know how complex um, looking at this world of ancient teachings and meditation. I know how perhaps distancing it can feel for someone who's new. So I've always tried to make my meditations um, fun. They can be deep, but I also want them to be open hearted in that way. I don't need anything to be serious. Some of us really thrive, but I'm for dogs, not dogma. So I like sharing, stuff that people can feel good about, uplifting uh, stuff. I feel the same way about social media. I don't get involved in a lot of the kookiness that goes on Instagram. I just want to come up with, how can I make someone have a better day today, not make a point and teach you the lesson about life that you don't know, that only I know. I don't need to go there. And so I think like one of these beautiful ways to like share and like send love, out into the world is to connect to these practices. And like I said, most people are crisis meditators. Like 85% of meditators are crisis meditators. We could assume the other 95% of the planet doesn't even meditate. So we're really only even talking about 5% of 8 billion people to begin with. But let's assume that, that it is real. So I've always come up with just little lines, sweet spot of the universe, rise, P, meditate, RPM, all these little sound bites that can make someone either smile when they hear it or think it's like a cool thing. And maybe that makes it not so deep because people are saying, did you transcend in the last meditation? Did you were you weaving through the cosmos? And I've created meditations where we're flying through the cosmos. Absolutely. I love that stuff. Um, but I figured, for many, many, many years, people have talked about the space between our thoughts, the space between our heartbeats, the space between our breaths. Some people have referred to that in time, you know, as the gap. Sometimes it lasts for a flicker, a millisecond. You could sit and meditate for 30 minutes, and maybe there's this one moment where you're like, what was that? Did I fall asleep? Was I out cold? Did I transcend? What was that? The moment you start asking that question, you're already out of it. So it doesn't matter. Don't try to don't worry about it. So I just started sort of inviting people to come to that place, come to that space between, every time you meditate. So I just started, I don't know, I've probably been saying that for 20 years, you know, say this is David G from the sweet spot of the universe, and I'll see you in the gap. And believe me, I get about 20 emails a day from people who are asking that exact same question. Hopefully they're listening
Yeah.
to this Love Bomb podcast and, their lives are being transformed. They're like, oh, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, now you could just send them a link. Like it's about 60 minutes into this one. Uh,
Right.
I think that's all I got, man. I'm conscious of your time. I know you got stuff to do and lives to change, but is there anything that I have not addressed or discussed where you're like, dude, how could you not ask me this? I really want to tell the world about this thing, or anything that riles
Well,
you up
yeah,
at the
that could
moment?
probably be another 5 hours, Jeremy, if as I go on. And
As you,
then, and you're like
yeah,
sound asleep. Jeremy,
as you
wake up. Did you hear that one? But
dust off the soapbox and
there are, there's just a few things that I would like to share. Um, this stuff was once reserved almost exclusively for stoners and hippies. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with stoners and hippies, but it was exclusively reserved for that. It was, part of the whole psychedelic era. It's part of the youth movement. And we've gotten away from that. I wish it returned again to the campuses, but the world was fighting different things at that time. But I believe that we transform the world by transforming ourselves. And I believe we are a people, and social media has created this. We are a people who pay a lot more attention to the world outside of ourselves than we do to the world inside of ourselves. I'm not saying we shouldn't, but if you're looking to change this stuff that's outside of you, the place to start is inside of you. And you might say, no, no, I need to change this war or this thing or this injustice or this other thing. Okay, I agree. You do need to do that, but first you need to make that shift internally. Where are you, you know, transgressing? Where are you being too harsh to others? Where are you not forgiving yourself? Where are you not forgiving some relative of yours, but we should forgive this person who lives 5,000 miles away, for their quote, you know, actions. And so since we transform the world by transforming ourselves, I think we should think globally, but act locally. How local? Your heart. Start with your heart. The ancient teachings tell us that if we're looking to truly flow something for the betterment of anyone out there, we need to be flowing that inside of us, or else we're not authentic as well. So you could act kind to somebody else, but not be kind to yourself. Well, then it's an act. How long can you hold that pose? You can forgive someone else, but if you're not forgiving yourself, is it truly, is there integrity in that? So it doesn't mean you have to solve all your stuff, but perhaps that kindness, compassion, forgiveness, and love needs to be directed first to yourself, and then you can flow it with greater ease and more authenticity out into the world. So we're all looking to change the planet that we're on in some way, whatever that way is. And so if we can start that shift lovingly, gently inside of us, one breath at a time, one meditation at a time, perhaps, then suddenly we become inspired to share the thing that's in us with someone else. And that is pure magic. And that's how I believe that we truly shift the world, to a more sustainable, loving, kinder, peaceful planet.
Yeah, well said, man. Um, I know that you have meditations and a website and teachings, and I will include links to that in the show notes so that people can find you. But is there a specific starting point that you send people to when they ask, "Hey, man, I'm interested. Where do I start? Like, how do I get into how do I do this?" Is there a specific link for that?
You can just go to davidji.com, and there's so many free meditations and ways for people to access these teachings. I've got the Mind Shift community and an Insight Timer and Unplug and Amazon and Apple and all sorts of stuff, out there. Like I said, it just launched the podcast. So there's a million ways to access. And Insight Timer is free. You can actually join Insight Timer, which has like 20 million meditators for free. And I think I have, I don't know, a couple of hundred meditations on Insight Timer. So some of them are scientifically evidence based, and others of them are totally kooked out, woo woo, spiritual, deep connections. But, and you can always, reach out to me. I am info@davidg.com. I know it sounds like the generic corporate email, but it's actually me. Um, but I do want to thank you, Jeremy, for inviting me to share some of this stuff. And I know that we're all on this journey together. And nothing really makes me smile more than when someone says, like you said, "Oh yeah, I've been meditating with you for like a bunch of years now." And it's like, yeah, how great is that? That we've been connected beyond time and space. And when someone says that, it's usually, not a crisis meditator. It's someone who's actually meditating. And so the power, how that shifted your own life and what, joy that's brought to you, and probably manifested this podcast as well as so many other great things that you've accomplished. So
Mm.
let's let's keep it going.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And to reiterate, yeah, you have been a part of me changing my life. So I just want to really thank you for that in a profound way. Like I've obviously been on my own journey and my own smorgasbord or buffet of items and samples, but yeah, you've been a staple at the buffet for a long time for me, and it's been a real treat to chat with you and connect in a more meaningful way. So thank you for all you do, and I hope you continue doing it for a long time, man. And yeah, I'll keep listening. I'll see you in the gap.
Yeah, I'll see you in the gap. Thank you so much for your kind words.
You're welcome, brother. You're welcome.